Hi, my name is Sachin Salian. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Aurionpro. Welcome to the very first episode of Aurionpro Dialogues with Leadership. Today we're going to talk about something very exciting. Aurionpro's Integral Lending Suite has just been ranked #1 in the Chartis quadrant. And here to speak with us are the two presidents of Aurionpro, Shekhar Mullatti and Sanjay Varma. Welcome.
Thanks, Sachin.
Hey, Sachin.
I'm going to kick off with the first obvious question, right? Integral Lending Suite has been recognized in Chartis for almost 3 years in a row, back to back, right? That's a real powerful endorsement. What do you think it means for this platform and for your customers globally? Sanjay?
Well, the biggest thing it is that it is an endorsement of the fact that we are doing the right things. We are addressing the key business issues and the key business points that are required of a lending solution, and we're doing it well. And for us, it's a ratification and a validation both from Chartis as well as our customers that we're on the right track. And we're, of course, pioneering and leading ahead with it.
Perfect.
Yeah, and really to add on to what Sanjay is saying, right? This is validation at the global level. You know, Chartis really maps our capabilities and expertise across their cross-section of customers who are large, leading global banks. That's precisely the target segment that we're after. We think it's a great coming together of minds.
Perfect. Could you give us a bit of insight into the vision of the Integral Lending Suite? It's something that has been recently launched. It's come together, and help our audience get that flavor of what this suite is all about.
Okay, so why now, right? Why did we choose to rebrand and relaunch our products? And it's not just about rebranding. We have also technically re-engineered and revamped a lot of the products that sit within the Integral Lending Suite. I think there are two reasons for that. There is in the tech and the financial services industry today an inflection point. Of course, it's a cliched paradigm that it is being led by AI, but whatever be the reason, there is an inflection point which will now slowly over the next 1 or 2 years roll out the new method or the new direction which every lending platform, every lending software platform will take, right? Which will be more analytic, more decision-led, more guided journeys, more independent microservice-led platforms, more business objective oriented software rather than representation of what's stored in the database. And we at Aurionpro, especially with Shekhar and me, the teams that we lead in this area, have been very focused on making sure that we future-proof and prepare ourselves for that journey. And with companies like Arya helping us with the entire focus on being business first, being a microservice and API enabled, being more agile, we have taken the necessary steps to be ahead of the curve, right? And it's just a natural consequence that when you're doing that and you see an inflection point come in, you rebrand and you relaunch so that the world and us, more importantly, the banks who are going to use us recognize what we are doing and identify us as lead and first movers in this space.
Got it. So a very similar question to you, Shekhar, right? How does Integral Lending Suite, align with the future of digital credit in your mind?
Well, a few things, right? First of all kinds of credit will continue to play a leading role in commerce across the world, right? So if GDP of the world grows, lending has to grow. And our ambition at Aurionpro is that we want to be a global leader in this space when it comes to software, right? To do that, we've done a couple of things. First of all, we've occupied all points on that value chain, right? So that we can address all customers with a solution that makes sense to them, that solves their business problems. The second is that we are not just technology, we're really domain, we're lending experts first, and we use the technology to enable our lending expertise, right? And with this, we are very well equipped to have a dialogue with customers, understand their business problem, brainstorm together, and transform what the future of that credit is going to look like, right? Because the reality is the future will be a little different for customers in different parts of the world. And what we need to be is adaptable, flexible, agile enough to match those differences across different parts of the world, across different segments. And that's where we are.
All right. All right, so let's peel the onions. Let's step a bit more deeper into what Indigo really is as a platform. So, can you give us an idea? It's an increasingly crowded market. How is Indigo lending standing apart from this competition?
Hey, maybe I'll start by explaining what is it that we aim to do differently, right? Our approach has always been business problems first, and like Shekhar very rightly said, the idea is to first see how you best address the business problem, and then how do you use technology as a force to enable that, rather than the other way around, where it's a technology solution which caters to some business aspects also, right? And there are three things that happen there. One, the view that we get is largely driven by our customers, their problems, how they want to differentiate or how they want to see a particular problem addressed, and we will focus very hard on that. So most of our product roadmaps are actually domain specific and domain differentiated. And that makes a difference because technology then follows, not leads. The second thing that we have very recently done, and this is also because of the inflection point that I was mentioning earlier, is that we have moved away from this concept of a singular monolithic product to persona-based journeys, right? Which actually caters for two things. One, makes the product offering or the offering that we take to our clients more specific to their individual or their particular business needs, rather than a broad stroke across the lending spectrum. The second thing, it makes it highly configurable and highly adaptable to business needs of a particular region or a particular lending type or a particular community, right? So, and then of course the last thing is this inflection point that we are talking about, again, where we are infusing a lot of intelligence into our products, a lot of analytics into our products, and making sure that we stay ahead of the curve. So if I was to summarize it, it would be a combination of going business first, technology next, making it persona-based, moving away from monolithic products, making it very specific to the particular persona whose business problems we are trying to address. And third, of course, being also ensuring at the same time we ingrain it with the necessary intelligence and the necessary features around artificial intelligence today to stay ahead of the curve.
So in terms of retail lending, what are the kind of IP that we are investing into? What are the kind of features that we are planning for the retail lending side of the business?
The one very key thing that we have done right now is we have re-architected and refreshed our entire product around an API-first, Microsoft-enabled, persona-based stack, which means we've gone away from saying that ours is a, let's say, for example, a loan origination product, to saying that our product now is a origination product which caters to specific personas, like a dealer originating an asset, like a broker originating a home loan, like a relationship manager originating an SME loan. And we have put all the necessary components behind it, right? And that very differentiates us into the market. We would be amongst the first few who have re-architected the product into this direction and ingrained it with the necessary artificial intelligence components to take that lead in the market.
Got it. Thank you. So Shekhar, what makes Integro really stand apart, especially on the corporate side?
So, when we design our products and our services, right, we always keep in mind the top 5 to 10 banks in a country. These banks are big. They have, large corporates as their customers, and those customers have very complex, financing needs. In order to be able to structure something like this elegantly, You need a very good data structure which captures the customer group on one side, the facility details on the other, the collateral as the third pillar of that data structure, and then be able to keep on looping in an end-to-end kind of permutation and combination to ultimately deliver what's called a one obligor exposure. Now, this kind of seems simple, but it sounds simple, but it's not as simple to do, right? And we execute this very, very elegantly. I mean, this is one example why our customers really love using our system. It helps them service their customers better in a transparent manner, and gets their funding home a lot faster than it would otherwise have happened.
Right. Perfect. So I have a follow-up on that. So how does this translate into solving actual problems for the banks?
Well, I mean, this is a really one great example, right? What does the bank want to do? Number one, the bank, when a customer comes to it for credit, they want to make sure they identify the bankable customers and give them that credit as quickly and in as convenient a manner as possible. So this is what our system helps them to do. Second is, if there is a customer who they feel is not creditworthy, then they need the power of the system to flag off the areas which could be borderline, right? Which requires incremental due diligence, and do that also in a very sophisticated and elegant manner, because the customers are always sophisticated. Our system allows them to do that. And thirdly, the process of the application flow is in a very collaborative kind of way. There are credit committees. So our platform allows people to communicate amongst themselves in a collaborative way before arriving at a credit decision. And all these things really make the difference and enable the bank to service their customer better, which means they've got the customer they want, they've got the credit that they want, and they get the return that they are looking for.
Got it. So Sanjay, on the retail side, the life cycle is different, right? So what kind of problems that you've been solving with Integro?
So Sachin, here's a funny thing, right? If you really look at the problems that have been coming up in the lending cycle, lending ecosystem, whether that be around asset finance or retail or even SME, they're not new. They're the same problems which have just taken a different shape, right? And they're around the same two or three things. Time to yes, that's the biggest problem. How quick can I give a decision? And this has been an age-old problem, right? Single customer, unified customer information or unified credit information. Can I get everything, every information, every document, every piece of fact or analysis of the customer in a single place, right? And one would think that these should be very basic problems to solve. I mean, time to yes, I should be able to do it fast. I should have all my customers' information in one area, right? And yet, surprisingly, in today's banking and financial services industry, these are big challenges, partly because of the technical debt that has developed over the years, partly because of the political infrastructure of the bank, which, in a lot of areas just has data sitting all over the place and lack of sharing, right? And then the third is the complexity which comes from technical debt. You start with a very simple system, a very, very nice, easy looking system, and over the next few years, it ends up to be a mass of fields, input fields all over the place. And I think it's, again, these three problems or problems similar to this that we have effectively addressed.
Got it.
One of the big things that we have been able to do is figure out a way of getting all information together. So unified credit, unified customer information is at the root of everything we do. And with today's technology, with open banking coming in, with APIs coming in, this is now possible in a way it wasn't, let's say, 5 to 6 years ago. So the fact that we have refreshed our technology and started moving around on this means that we don't have the technical debt and we can be faster at adopting all the necessary changes and all the necessary enhancements to allow us to go faster with unified customer information, unified credit, and then lead to two more things. Time to yes. That's the biggest one, right? We are really focusing on making sure we use every bit of business advantage that we can get, every bit of technical advantage that we can get for this one very thing, time to yes. And the last word, a word that you'll hear a lot when you speak to people within Aurionpro, is intuitive simplicity.
Yeah.
How can I make something that is simple, yet intuitive, and yet does the job? I mean, I can give you an example here. We were deploying one of our systems for a captive auto finance company. This is one of the larger companies which does commercial vehicle finance across the globe. And this particular one was in the US.
Yep.
And we initially looked at what they were using. It was about 9 screens with close to about 70 to 80 fields, right? Which we managed to simplify down to a single screen with somewhere around 20, 25 fields, and it did the same job, right? So it's just a question of going back to the basics and making sure you do them better. You're able to satisfy your client's requirements with a better way of accelerating or enhancing their time to yes, making sure they get unified credit view and a unified customer view, and making sure that you can serve and package this whole thing in a way that provides intuitive simplicity to them. And that's what we have been able to do well.
Can you double down on intuitive simplicity? I think we heard a bunch of feedback for the Intuitive platform on this.
Yes, so what we really did was we redesigned our entire UI and UX. They're two separate things, a user interface and a user experience. People speak of them in the same breath, but they're actually two very distinct components of design, right? And we looked at what does it take to complete a process, whether that process be just getting data entry of a client's information, personal information, credit information, income, expenses, right?
Yep.
And what is the simplest or the neatest way to do it without adding too much of complexity? I think it's a techie thing that when you ask a person to give you a room, they're trying to draw a house.
Yeah.
And when you get to a point where you can control that and you can take it through a logical flow, which is more business driven than technology driven, you tend to end up with asking yourself questions: why is anything more than what I already have needed?
Right.
What value will it add? Will that value really trade off well against the negatives that it puts in terms of both technical debt and overhead on the system itself? And we have been pretty strict, we've been pretty diligent with this. We pushed back a lot of times to our clients itself saying that, tell me why what we are doing will not work for you. And more often than not, they're like, yeah, I think it will, right? So it's just a question of changing the way you approach these problems, looking at it from a very simplistic point of view, and understanding one very basic tenet of human thought. We human beings like looking at neat, clean, beautiful things.
Yeah.
You provide that in a software, you will get acceptance with the same way it would in real life.
I think bankers will really crave for that simplicity in their complex systems these days. Yeah.
That's what we're aiming for.
Awesome. So, Shekhar, on the corporate side, probably you could enlighten us some of the real power punchy impacts that you've been able to get to some of our customers, because Integro's been around for a number of years, has some marquee customers in the roster. So, give us some ideas, some examples of some of these impact stories.
Yeah, I mean there are several, but one that comes top of mind is one of our features called Show Diff.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what happens in a loan in a corporate loan process, right, is that the RM prepares a fairly thick dossier of information about the customer and the facility, and gives that to the credit approver. The credit approver will take a look at that. I mean, more than a look, right? It's quite an in-depth kind of study, and as is quite likely, we'll have maybe 10 or 15 questions, right? And with those 10 or 15 questions, they'll go back to the RM, and the RM in turn will go back to the customer to say, hey, you know what? We have a few questions about your application. Da 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 da. And then all that information gets collated. It comes back to the credit processor. Now, before our customers had our system, that credit processor would then again read that thick dossier of 100 pages front to back all over again. But now we have a very elegant mechanism where they don't need to read the whole thing all over again. They can only read the deltas, right? And those deltas are granular enough that it's at the field level. So you can really cut short the rework in the system. For us, that's our way of injecting simplicity into the process and delivering successful outcomes. This in itself helped some of our customers, reduce timelines from where it was 3 weeks to 3 days. It was 3 months to 3 weeks. Substantial.
But that's really powerful impact. And so what struck me in my mind is, what's the kind of technology that really powers this kind of outcomes, right? So if you can give us a flavor of the kind of enterprise, we keep saying enterprise technology, right? Can you give us a flavor of what kind of investments or what kind of IP has been built in terms of enterprise technology for Integro?
The technology, underlying technology elements are very similar, right, throughout the lending suite. It is microservices, it is API first, it is, and from there, what we are moving to is a AI native, kind of architecture to be, ready for the now and the hereafter, right? It's how those are adapted to the different business segments. That's where it differs, but the underlying layer is the same. The kind of skill sets that we're accumulating from a technology perspective within the corporation is actually quite similar. Increasingly, the differentiation will be really at the domain or the customer subject area.
Yep.
And that's the journey we are on.
Perfect. Sanjay, I'll a different question for you, right? I have these memes floating around, right? The CEO says AI, the business head says AI, the technology guys say AI, right? And how do you rise from that mix? Because help us understand how, Aurionpro's acquisition last year of Aria.ai, right? We've got these bunch of really smart data scientists, and it's almost a true AI company. They've been around for more than 10 to 12 years, right? How are we getting that flavor or, the depth of that AI into practical applications in the Integro suite?
It's actually okay to talk about technology innovation and not talk about AI, as cliched as it may sound, would be wrong, right? Today, we guys, at least I would say me, I've been lucky enough to witness 2 inflection moments in technology. The first one was when the entire architecture came in and we went and we browser enabled our applications. And everybody was then talking about web browsers, the same thing now, right? Everybody is talking about AI, right? AI, we will, over the next couple of years, become central to almost everything we do, but not the way it's been shown in the movies with Terminator and Skynet, but more in the way the web browser changed our lives, right? It will become a very powerful tool that will allow us to take the next leapfrog in technology, to be able to do tasks, analysis, assistance that are quasi-human, that mimic human beings, right? Will it replace human beings? No, I don't think it will, not in the near future at least. It will guide them, yes, it will. It will assist them, yes, it will. The same thing that a web browser did earlier, right? It did not replace human beings, it helped you expand technology reach, right? And the same thing with AI. So how does AI work for us? What are we trying to do with AI? As you rightly said, we acquired Aria.ai, and as our CEO, Ashish, likes to say that you'll find 1 million people with 1 year of AI experience, but you'll find only a handful who have 10 years plus, and Aria.ai is a bunch of such people. They have been working at AI for over a decade now. They know what it means to work an application to AI, enable an application. They know the difference between taking an application into a prototype and taking a prototype into production. And we're leveraging that advantage, taking baby steps and doing, so what we're now using AI for are around 3 areas. One, assisted journeys. Can I, like I said, time to yes and unified credit is a big thing that we're trying to solve. Can I use AI to assist in taking, or at least in guiding down decisions that otherwise would require somebody to stop this application flow look up a user manual, ask different questions, and go there. Can AI provide that alternates, right? We are using AI now also to do things like document processing. And this is an interesting one. Like a classic cornerstone of every loan origination system and every loan origination process is document collection.
Yep.
Every time you apply for a loan, the first thing you ask is, I want this document, this document, this document. And most loan origination systems have this huge, very complex flow around how we collect documents, right? But then you go back to the heart of it and say, do you really need documents? And if you need those documents, what do you need them for? You need them to validate and verify whether the person is actually who they say they are,
Yep.
and whether what they're claiming is actually true. You don't really need documents. You need that validation and verification, right? And that's where AI can be used smartly to do that in alternate ways. You don't need to collect a document. You need to look at whatever document is available or whatever source is available and validate smartly using artificial intelligence whether that claim is correct or wrong, or if it is wrong, what's the delta, right? So those are the ways in which we're using it. So again, to recap, we're using it very, very effectively, and again, in small baby steps around assisted journeys.
Yep.
Around making sure that we work around time to yes, we work around unified credit journeys and unified customer information, help AI do that, to do away with things which have become necessary, but actually are redundant. This document example I gave you is a classic one, right? And then I think the biggest one will be to make sure that complex decisions can get simplified. And what is presented to a credit underwriter or a relationship manager is a very simplistic view saying that, hey, I looked at this application, or I looked at this portfolio, or I looked at this person. Everything looks fine. Maybe you just need to check this.
Correct. Shekhar, you're an ex-banker, Bank of America, I believe, right? So if you put on your banker's hat, right, what will drive a banker to consume such technologies? What's the decision making in the mind of a banker when someone presents that the level, the depth that AI can predict for you, the productivity it can bring, but what goes on in the mind of a buyer?
Well, the banker really doesn't want a lot of hassle. Unfortunately, banking is a very regulated industry. Some of this documentation is for the purpose of providing information. Some of it is because, it's mandated by compliance. And you need to store that as for several years after the fact, right? But if there's some way or some technology that can help them, eliminate this hassle of collating information, analyzing the information in that document, and yet maintaining an audit trail, right? I think that's a great, one great way that the hassle will, of the banker will get minimized. Really, the banker on the corporate side wants to go strike a deal with the customer and say, hey, we think this is a great initiative or investment that you as a corporate are doing, and we want to, finance and structure that, right? So this is, and this is exactly like Sanjay mentioned, right? The way that we are trying to leverage technology. For us, it's quite a natural evolution because the thing that intuitively comes to us is solving the customer's business problem and leveraging that technology to do this, right? AI is the new technology that we think will accelerate doing most of the stuff that we're already doing. For example, financial documents, right? If you're a corporate, these financial documents have to be analyzed. And there's so much content in them, they need to be crunched to come out with a rating or a scoring, kind of a model, because that's the way that the credit is assessed. If AI can take the grunt work out of that, why not, right? Today, our RMs are writing, very long and detailed summaries of their applications, which are then read out in credit committees. If AI can help them generate that with the level of accuracy that's acceptable, right? I mean, that's a great way that the system and technology really helps them, right? So just a few examples of what we're doing.
So we're stepping into the last segment, and I'm very keen to ask this question to both of you, right? you've been around the industry for a number of decades on the banking side, on the technology, both sides of the fence, right? Can you give us a view as to what are the big trends today in the lending space?
Sanjay, you want to go first?
Well, trends or what's coming up, right? Look, again, everybody is speaking about AI to death, right? What we need to understand also is that it's been a while since a new set of regulations came. And today there is, I think, an upcoming wave of regulations, which, in my opinion, will come and hit the lending sector around two areas largely, right? One, of course, just regulation of AI explainability. That's going to be a big one, right? As and when people start getting more into productizing and productionalizing AI-based tools, there will be a need for explainability. And you can see Europe has already started AI regulations. It's just a matter of time before the others follow, right? And this will be big, not because it's something everybody is already forecasting, planning for, but also because for a very long time, or for the first time, very long time, people really will not know what needs to be done. A regulator might put in a very blanket statement saying, you took a decision based on this outcome that the AI model gave. Yeah. Tell me, how did it arrive that model? And that the whole idea of putting AI was so that you don't have to bother about figuring out how it arrived at that model. It kind of goes into a loop, right? So a lot of explainability will come in. A lot of back tracing will come in and trying to figure out how these come. The second regulation, surprisingly, will be on an area that I think is fast growing. It's an area that we are pursuing very diligently. We think it's a growth sector, which is around private financiers and private credit, right? It's unregulated by and large right now, and it's just a matter of time before it hits the eyes of the regulators and they go like, okay, about time we did something. Because what started off as filling a gap that a lot of SMEs, lot of businesses in the need for loans could not fulfill by the banks, has now grown to almost an independent segment in itself, right? Well, so that's as far as regulations goes. The other thing that I think will now happen will be a tighter binding of finance to purchase. Yeah. We saw that with buy now, pay later, but that was just the start. That was again something which came in purely to fill in the underserved and largely, a lower, more subprime segment. But I think just the fact that the separation between purchase and finance eventually going away is just a matter of time. So that could be a very big trend, especially when you link it up with, the digitalization of currencies, right? How do you measure risk on it? How do you control it, et cetera, et cetera. But more than that, it's also a great way in which you can predict growth. Yeah. Right now, things don't need to be looked at as a price tag. They need to be looked at as a monthly payout or a monthly installment. So I think those are the exciting, regulation aside, that's the exciting thing that we're looking at coming up ahead.
Good. Yeah, and likewise, on the corporate side, right? The regulation on explainability, of course, but one of the other interesting regulations, is actually the whole ESG space. It's been going along, for a while. With the Trump administration, everybody thinks that it's going to disappear. But when we talk to our customers, quite the contrary, right? These banks, leading banks in most countries have been around for decades, some of them for half a century, right? And so they know that a politician will come and go in 4 years, but the business is here to stay. And certainly they're continuing to invest in capabilities on ESG. I think there's a fundamental belief that this is a good thing, right? Now, the extent to which you tighten the screw or loosen the screw from a regulatory perspective, that may vary, right? But the capability needs to be there. So this is one regulation certainly we're seeing. Private credit, certainly on the corporate side, with the BlackRocks of the world, it's becoming a monster. right? Like most financial trends, it's really very US centric at the moment. But I think there's enough liquidity in the world that others, will follow suit. If we talk to our bankers, if you talk to retail bankers and ask them, hey, what keeps you awake at night? They say fintechs are going to eat our lunch. If you talk to corporate bankers, they say, private credit is going to eat our lunch, right? And we hear, we listen, and we say, okay, we should be there regardless of whoever eats whose lunch. Our solutions need to be able to cater to all those segments.
Perfect. So that's a right segue to the final segment. My last question. Integro's stated ambition and its growth. What's in your mind? What are you planning? Right? How are you planning to actually take this brand to the rest of the world?
Okay, it's a two-pronged approach right now. We're going to consolidate and tech refresh our current client base and our current home markets, right? And for this coming year at least, our focus will be Europe. And in Europe also to specific zones. The third thing that we are focusing on, which we think is almost a separate segment in itself, is captive financing, right? Whether that be captive asset finance, captive equipment finance, or just, like I said, a brand selling or financing its own goods. So captives, going into Europe, expanding there in these two specific markets, DACH and UK. And then, of course, making sure that we consolidate our current install base and help them refresh or adopt the technology refresh that we have done, right? I think those are the three things that will be on at least my side of the business.
Yeah, and I mean, Europe, bang on, right? And the flavor of Europe lends itself very well to the capabilities in our product. Europe is multi-currency, multi-language, multi-country, right? We do that routinely, right? We have the ability to go and even share some best practices, right, on how to effectively operate in that environment. We think that many of these banks don't know that there is such a seamless platform available, right? And we're very keen to get out there, have some dialogues, showcase our capabilities, understand their business problems, tweak our models to adapt to the European specific way of doing business, and hopefully arrive at a win-win.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Shekhar. Thank you for your time, Sanjay. I think it was a wonderful discussion, and I think when we're seeing Integro grow is not just with our expansion plans. I think what we bring is that the depth of that domain, the depth of that capability, and I think with that right flavor of the intense technology that we bring from our partners from the AI group and from the IPs that we build. So we will sign off with that, and thank you for watching the first in our series. If you'd like to have a in-depth dialogue on both the corporate side and the retail side of lending, you can reach out to us on Aurionpro.com. We'll be glad to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sachin. Thanks.